this is Harvard.
And this is Santi, coming to you with your daily news.
This just in, the North Vietnamese troops have made a major offensive push in the war during Tet, which is customarily a ceasefire for both sides.
Of course those communists would attack us during a ceasefire. What would you expect?
Well, let's recap on how we got ourselves into this war in the first place.
On August 2nd, in 1964, 3 North Vietnamese Navy torpedo boats aggressively entered pursuit on the USS Maddox, which was on a routine patrol, as you can clearly see in this image.
Allegedly North Vietnamese ships. Nevertheless, we fired torpedoes on them and damaged all of them, which resulted in the deaths of 4 alleged North Vietnamese sailors.
The image is clear as day. You can clearly see that those are enemy torpedo cruisers right there, there, and there. I mean, who else could they be? Why would they be following our patrol boat if they weren't enemies?
Clear as day. Regardless of who they were, the next incident in the Tonkin Gulf was not so clear-cut. On August 4th, just 2 days later, our radars detected blips and we fired blindly, thinking it was the enemy.
It was the enemy. We couldn't let them fire on us before we couldn't let them fire on us before we fired on them.
I don't know, the sailors on the top deck have recalled that they didn't see anything and that they were never fired upon. Some are calling the blips on the radar the Tonkin Ghost due to the strange nature around the event.
On August 7th, 1964, a couple days after we fired on the ships, Congress enacted a joint resolution in response to the Tonkin Gulf incidents.
That's true. This resolution was wildly popular with an overwhelming vote of 88 to 2 in the U.S. Senate. This allowed LBJ to deploy troops in Southeast Asia without a declaration of war.
This was a huge increase in the power of the executive branch, and it was in the name of defending pseudo nations from red aggression.
This led to a massive increase in boots on the ground for our soldiers, from then all the way to present day, which finally leads us to the current breaking news we have for you folks today, the Tet Offensive.
Just a reminder that this offensive took place during an established ceasefire for both sides.
The offensive targeted 5 major South Vietnamese cities, dozens of military outposts, and scores of towns and villages. The attack was so large and sudden that the Viet Cong were able to breach the South Vietnamese palace and the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. This image was taken during one of the surprise attacks in the offensive.
Another thing to note about this offensive is that it was highly televised through American media. However, deviating from the usual guerrilla tactics would cost the enemy, as they suffered a large death toll, with more casualties than the U.S. took by a resounding amount, with about 60,000 casualties for the North and only about 3,000 for our troops.
With a huge offensive like this, the U.S. generals are calling for even more troops to add to the 500,000 that have already been sent in hopes of starting a counteroffensive to take back the city.
And like I said before, this offensive was highly televised throughout American media, with many pictures and film being shared.
True, which caused many Americans to call for an end to the war after watching this battle live on television.
As we can see in this image, some of the cities are already being taken back under South Vietnamese and United States control, with the soldiers tracking down and finding any communists that are in the cities.
This man here was shot when he was already on his way to be questioned after being captured. Word is that our troops massacred many unarmed civilians at My Lai under the leadership of Lieutenant William McCabe.
Yes, that is correct. The troops were on a search and destroy mission, but they committed numerous war crimes trying to root out the enemy. Even if you're a supporter of this war, this information is very disturbing, so viewers be advised.
According to eyewitness accounts, several elderly men were killed with bayonets and praying women and children were executed.
Now, groups of students and others around the country are calling for an end to the war. They are protesting everywhere from colleges to even the White House.
The protesters are claiming that we are sending more and more people to their deaths, and it seems that the Tet Offensive, although not a resounding defeat or victory for the U.S., has demoralized the public and changed a lot of people's minds and opinion on the war.
I say keep fighting. America hasn't lost the war yet, and this one's not about to be our first.
Many protesters have taken to chant as their preferred form of protest. One of the most popular yet shocking is, and I quote, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" And that is not the only form of protest, as many are also burning their draft cards and dodging the draft to avoid being sent to war.
So we lost some cities in an offensive, but we still managed to pull off a counterattack. We should never lose a war, let alone a war to communism.
With the war continuing to escalate, the supporter has to ask, will it be worth it in the end to send all these people to die? We are just getting word that Lyndon B. Johnson has announced he will not be running for re-election.
Wow, that's crazy. We can only hope that our next president will be successful in running this country.
If I had to guess, I'd say Richard Nixon is going to win this election, and I'm sure he will be a near perfect president after what we just saw with LBJ.
I certainly hope so. Well, this is Santiago,
And Harlan.
signing off.